Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're going to be painting the mountaintop from Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. Now the other day, Steven actually got a copy of Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo. We've been looking for it for a long time. In fact, at our local game store, it's the only game we tell them, when you get this in, call us, because it's one game that I've wanted to pick up. So what happened is we got the game, and then I was like, oh, I should paint something from Harvest Moon. I know Stardew Valley is really big right now, but I've actually beaten Harvest Moon, and I've only gotten through like 2 seasons in Stardew Valley, so I decided I was going to go with Harvest Moon. Now I went ahead, loaded up the game, and I just went up to the mountaintop, took some pictures of it in the spring. Then I just hopped in and out of bed for 30 days until it got to be summer, took some more pictures at the mountaintop, and then I did the same thing for fall and winter. I also checked the Starry Night Festival and then the New Year's Day sunrise to see which one I liked best and to see how it changed through all of the seasons and what I was going to do. So I decided I was going to do the New Year's Day sunrise. So I kind of did a really rough sketch of it here with some of the colors just so I could start to see how things come together. So the first thing I'm going to do on my canvas is I'm just going to go ahead and recreate the sky. I'm going to draw in a horizon line here so I know where I can stop painting sky because the mountains will cover up the rest. So I'm going to go ahead and mix colors up and then just put them on my canvas. The sky colors in game are actually quite dull, so I've tried to replicate that. So I have this dull orange and then I have a dull yellow orange that it's going to fade to. So I'm just going to go ahead and start up here, fill in this top row with this dull orange. Once that's good, I'm just going to go ahead and grab this dull yellow-orange color and just bring that in here and kind of blend them up together. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think this is way too brown. Once it's up there on the canvas and comparing it to the red, which I actually do like, I just don't like how it looks at all. So I've remixed up more of this because I ran out, and then I've changed this color. I made it a bit more yellow, less brown, so I'm just going to go ahead and redo that in the new color. I've let my sky dry, so it's time to start adding in clouds. And just like in other paintings, closer to my horizon line they're going to be smaller and closer together, but the further up here they get, they're going to be bigger and then they're going to be a bit spread out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same color I have down here, and then I'm just going to kind of mark in these guys with it. And then I'm going to be bringing in other colors on top, like some white, just to give highlights. And then to layer my colors, I just took a little bit of white and mixed it in with this. I think I got too much on my paintbrush. We're just going to add a little bit of highlights into these guys. And then just to finish it off, I'm just going to take a little bit of white and put that in there too. And I think I still have too much on my brush. I don't want to add too much. The next thing in my sketch is the mountains, so I'm just going to use my chalk pastel pencil and kind of sketch in where they're going to go, just to make sure I have like how many I want and how spaced out they are. I don't want to measure and have them really regular because it's going to look unnatural. So I'm just going to go ahead and sketch those in first, and then I've mixed up kind of a lighter yellow-orange color to fill those in with. So my chalk really isn't showing up, and I think it's because my paints are slightly wet, so it's just kind of turning into a mush on my pencil. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and freehand this in with a paintbrush. And I'm not super thrilled about doing that, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. So I'm just going to be very careful and fill these in. And I don't know how far down I'm going with these yet. I haven't quite decided where, you can stand and where the pine trees are going to be. So I'm just going to guess, and then probably guess like further down than I think I should go, just in case, because I can always bring in more pine trees. I meant to bring this further down the canvas, but I ran out of paint, so I'm just going to have to deal with it. And my pine trees are going to cover some of it, so I'm not too worried there. But the next thing is my mountains are all going to be snow-capped. So I just have some heavy body titanium white. I'm just going to put a little bit on my palette and then kind of paint in all the snow caps. Now the way I'm doing this is I'm just taking my brush and kind of doing a streak into the white paint. Then I'm just painting a line on my palette to get some of that paint off. And then I'm going to my canvas, laying it down, and kind of just filling it in that way. Just so I have some of these specks of the canvas texture coming through, because I don't want it to be solid blank white. I want it to have this texture, and this is the easiest way to do it. This is kind of how Bob Ross did his mountaintops with the snow. He used his palette knife for it, and with these tiny mountains I'm not that good, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it with a brush. Now that I've finished that, I'm not super fond of how it looks. It just kind of looks scratchy and scribbly, and it's a complete mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try some other things. And I'm going to go ahead and just fill my paintbrush solid and make these mountain peaks a bit more filled in white. And then just kind of blend that down into what I had before. Those mountain peaks look a lot better. I kind of tried to just bring in some other clumps of snow in there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I have some zinc white in a big paintbrush. I'm just going to go ahead and make a little bit of mist down here, just so I have some depth between the mountain and the pine trees. Before I put the pine trees in, I'm going to go ahead and kind of put the mountaintop part where all the characters can stand. So I just have a chalk pastel, and I think I'm going to kind of make it just a little bit taller, kind of fill it in this way. Now the only reason I'm drawing this in is because it's going to be in front of the pine trees, and I don't want to have to fill everything with pine trees and then just sit around and wait for them to dry. I kind of want to have this space empty so I can make sure I can keep working. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of just sketch this in where I want it to go. And then I'll start doing the pines. The last time I did these pine trees was the Misty Castle Twilight Princess painting. That was the one that was all green. And I'm going to be doing the same technique, but I wanted to talk about paintbrushes for a second. On that painting, I used this Liquitex basic brush, and it's just a number 4 fan. You can just see it's really floppy. I mean, it's not that crazy, but like this one, this is Simply Simmons a fan, and it's an extra firm brush. So this one has a lot more snap to it, which is what I tend to look for when I'm buying acrylic paintbrushes. The soft ones, like, they're good for painting, but like these ones are a lot better. So I prefer the brushes that are extra firm and they have a good snap. I go into a store to buy brushes and I'll take it and I'll bend the bristles back and see how good of a snap they have. So let's find another good snap. Now these ones are both Simply Simmons, you can see the difference here, and they're both 3/4 flats. This one is the extra firm, and then this is just the regular one, and you can't actually tell by looking at the labeling on it at all, so I mean that's not helpful, but it's the red bristle ones, and I get those from AC Moore, and I can find these ones on Blick, and I can find these ones at Michael's, at least in my stores. I know some people can't find golden paint even at their Michael's. So this one, the snap is still there, you can hear it. But then on this one, the snap is a lot different. See? So I try to get the ones that have a better snap, but I don't want them to be like the bristle brush, like this one for oil paints, because it's really crazy and not all nice and smooth and together like these ones are. So that's kind of what I look for in my paintbrushes. Just like that Misty Castle painting, I'm just going to load up this fan brush with a little bit of this green, and it's Jenkins green with a little bit of white. And I think it provides a nice contrast to the colors I have so far. So what I'm going to do is, just like that Misty Castle painting, I'm going to go ahead and fill in a long line for this pine tree, and then I'm going to use the corner of my brush to kind of go back and forth and start to make this pine. Now I'm starting to realize that I didn't draw it up high enough because the next one might be shorter and I'm going to see some of this raw canvas where my mountains didn't go for. So I'm just going to reload up my paintbrush, maybe draw this pine tree a little bit taller, and then I'm just going to go ahead and re-put this back down just taller. So that way I know I'm not going to be showing any of this raw canvas between all my pine trees. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of do a nice row of them across this way, changing their heights. There's going to be a lot more detail to these, and because this is the New Year's sunrise, they're going to have snow on them just like the mountain caps. So I'm going to be showing you how to do that too. Now, I'm not sure how it happened, but I got some paint on my shirt. I probably leaned forward at some point or touched it with a brush. That doesn't really happen to me all that often, but I thought it was a good opportunity to mention how I get paint off my clothes. There's only been one thing I couldn't save, and that's because it got all over my pants and they were tan. For some reason I got some paint to the bottom of my palette, and then I put it on my lap, and I didn't notice, and that kind of stuck there, so I couldn't save those pants. But everything else I tend to notice and I can save. There's two products I use. The one that I use most is Kiss Off. I just get the thing wet and put some of this on it. It's kind of like a giant tube of chapstick, so you can see some of the paint on there. This works pretty good, and I really haven't noticed it staining my clothes or like bleaching them. The other thing I have around is a Tide stick. And I don't know, I don't feel like this works as good, but I do have one around. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to save this shirt, but luckily I got it on clearance, so I'm not too worried about it. But back to painting, I'm going to go ahead and keep filling in these trees. So I've decided to paint in these bottom sections with just some plain Jenkins green. Because I want them to be darker, because the sun's going to kind of be up from here. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in. It's just going to kind of be a base, so I'm not really worried about filling it in with trees. I'm just kind of putting a darker color there, so it's going to essentially act as a shadow later on when I layer this with pine trees. So I tried adding some highlights to my trees, and I realized that there's just not enough darkness to them. So I just have some pure Mars Black here, and I'm going to add just a little bit into some of these trees. And it's going to become a lot more noticeable as I add my highlights on, but right now it's not that big of a difference. I'm just going ahead and fixing all my mistakes now by going a little bit back over the black because I don't want it to be the next color in succession. Because it's just the shadows, it should kind of be hidden, buried underneath my other greens. So I'm just going to go back over with my original green, the one I started with, just to hide a little bit of it. And then I can bring those highlights back. With that done, I can go ahead and add in the highlights. So let this be a lesson to myself. Don't be lazy or you're going to end up doing it twice anyway. So like I said before, I'm just going in, deciding which trees are going to be in the background and kind of just stopping them so that other trees can come forward. So you can see like this one kind of ends here, this one ends here, and let's fill in maybe this little guy back here. Maybe this one on the other side. So I'm just doing all those trees first. And I'm trying not to make it every other, but I'm kind of doing that, so I need to change that up. Because I did the lighter color where I determined which trees were in front of the other ones, I know which ones are going to be the same thing for the snow because I'm going to think the same way. Now I've switched to a flat brush, just a rectangle flat here, and I'm going to do the same sort of technique, but I don't want to use the fan brush for this because I want the snow to kind of sit on top of everything. I don't want it to be these flat, long branches. And I'm doing this yellow first because I'm thinking about how the sky is going to reflect into that bright snow. So I'm going to do this kind of a yellow color first, that's kind of like these up here, and then I'm going to put white on top of that. So I'm just going to make sure I get the tips of the trees really good, and then just kind of work down towards the bottom. I have all the snow that's reflecting the sky, so now I'm just going to bring in highlights for those. And I'm just using plain white for that. And I'm just kind of doing the same tapping motion and trying to kind of randomize it. I'm going to do some more on the right side before I go to the left, and then just kind of jump back and forth. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a few more trees in here. The whole thing is going to be pine trees. I'm not going to see the bottoms of any of them. I kind of just did this arbitrary line, but they're all going to get covered up anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill a few more in. I'm using the same technique for this, but I am using the black and just going to kind of work my way forward. Basically what I should have done in the first place for the last set, but it's too late now. I just went over it and had to redo it. So I'm just doing the same back and forth with the fan brush. Because of the way I'm putting on the snow, I'm starting to change how I'm doing the pine trees. I'm still doing the fan brush back and forth for the black part, but once I get to the green, I'm applying it the same way I applied the snow on the last set. Now because they're kind of far away, it's hard to tell, but it just helps me for when I'm doing the snow later. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish filling these in with the dark green, jump over, do the white, jump over, do the light green, jump over, do the black of the next row, and like I said, I'm just going to work back and forth until both sides are completely filled with pine trees, all the way down to the bottom. I've put that light color on and you can really see kind of how I'm doing this. So I'm just starting kind of at the bottom, and I'm thinking of it like layered skirts. So I'm kind of just bringing each layer of the skirt on the tree and rotating the brush back and forth. I'm going to go over exactly how I'm doing these trees step by step, because I think that would kind of help tie all this knowledge together. So what I'm doing is I'm finding it's easiest to start the tree in black with a fan brush. So I have a fan brush here, and then I'm just going to kind of do the same thing I did before, where I go straight down the middle. And then I'm going to do the back and forth with this black. And the reason I like doing this first, or what I'm finding it works best, is because I can make the actual shape of the pine tree a lot better using this method than using the next method for the next color. For my next step, I'm switching brushes to this flat, and then I'm using my dark green, and I'm going to go on top of the tree and start kind of at the top. And I'm thinking about the branches all kind of going outwards, like a bunch of fingers, kind of overlapping like this. So I'm just taking some of the green, maybe I'll start down here at the bottom, and I'm using the corner of the brush. And I'm just kind of tapping to bring in these different branches. And I'm staying inside the tree that had been drawn by the fan brush, or painted. In between all my colors, I'm really making sure they dry, because if they're not, they're all just going to start to blend together and make a green, like the same green for the whole thing. So now that this is dry, it's time for the next step, and this is my lighter green, and I'm just using a different flat brush this time while I wait for the other one to dry a little bit. And everywhere I've put kind of this dot or this branch for one of these trees, I'm just going to kind of go back over it and just kind of get the tips of it. The next color is this light orange, and I'm just kind of adding this to the tips of all the branches. The same technique I've been using with the other colors besides the fan brush technique. Just adding it to the tips of the trees and then the tips of all the branches because the snow kind of like collects on those. And making sure I still keep my layers of which trees are in front and which are behind. And it's gonna look weird just because it's kind of yellow. It's just the reflection of all the skylight. And if you think about the sunrise is very, very orange because my sky is so orange and red. That's kind of where all that color is coming from. It'll look a lot better once it's been covered in white, just like up here. But if you look closely, you can still kind of see some of this orange in there behind it. It's just kind of a little bit of a reflection that I'm gonna hide later. To complete the yellow, I'm doing the same thing I did with the white. Just going on the tips of all of these and just kind of filling it in with some more white. Just to kind of hide that yellow because it's my reflection, but I don't want it to be yellow snow. So I'm going to continue in this manner to fill the rest of these trees with the snow. And then I'll go ahead and do more rows of trees until I've filled in the whole left and the right of the canvas. Like I want to have tips of trees even all the way down here, and then we'll continue on to the bottom of the canvas. After those are done and dry, it's time to fill in this mountain here, so I'll give that a base coat and then we'll talk about that. The base coat is dried, so it's time to add detail to this mountain. And a lot of the colors I've mixed up here are kind of in the same family. This was the color I used for that base. I have a slightly warmer color, a slightly darker warmer color, a darker version of this, and then I have a lighter version kind of this too. So I'm going to be using all of 5 of these colors to start to bring in some detail to this. Now what I'm going to do is I need to find a red pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and start to kind of draw in where these shadows are going to go. And then I'm going to use those dark and those warm dark colors to fill in the shadows, and then bring in some of the medium tones, which is this base color, and then I'll use that lighter color to bring in some of the highlights. So I'm going to kind of work dark to light again, but I wanted this here so I could kind of prime it and make a nice edge. So let's start drawing. Because I'm working dark to light, I can go ahead and kind of be a bit looser with these dark shadows because they're going to get covered up by the lighter colors as I work through them. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of just roughly fill those in to make sure they have the value they're going to get. And we're done! We have the mountaintop from Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a print or a poster or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.